All right. Well, speaking of overblown, I'm going to eat my hat here on our last story here. Before we start, I just want to start off here with Robinhood getting into the event contract game,
Okay.
specifically here for the election markets. So let's see what they have to say on Bloomberg.
And it's time now for the Wall Street Beat. Robinhood will let retail traders bet on the outcome of next week's presidential election. That's as it diversifies from traditional markets. The event contracts
Having a hard
will
time
be
hearing
limited,
this one.
and buyers will have to attest that they meet a variety of requirements, according to the company. Bloomberg's Catherine Doherty joins us now, and it's interesting to see them do this right. Of course, there's been a lot of regulatory concerns about this world up until this point. They're also pairing up in sorts with Interactive Brokers. They're utilizing IBKR's backend for trade routing. These used to be historic competitors. Why is this an opportunity for Robinhood at this juncture, and does it give them a serious opportunity with such a short time horizon into the election?
So I don't think they're worried about the short time horizon. They are really trying to take advantage of the activity that other platforms, some of their competitors, have already seen and displayed that this is something that they can get into. But really the big question mark was the regulation around this. And it's interesting because the CFTC has not changed its tune. It's still very concerned about the market interaction and this betting on the outcome of the election and what possible ramifications it might have on the election itself and the integrity of the election. Now, when the court had reversed the stay that basically was preventing these types of betting to occur, that opened the floodgates. So that's why we're seeing Robinhood today make this announcement. Interactive Brokers was really the first registered big platform that started this wave. And it could be that even between now and next week, we see others that follow.
The question was, hey, why is Robinhood jumping in? What is it, elections next Tuesday? Now they're jumping in order to get event contracts there for the vendor markets. And the argument that's been passing around is that because they're seeing, just like these other platforms, we're at the beginning of this market run. The interest in betting on events is just absolutely skyrocketing. Now, I don't know if you know this, if you're in these circles, Mike, but there are whole people who they make their living on these betting markets. Like, I didn't really know that.
Incredible.
Just like, yeah, they're just like someone else might be specialized in trading crypto or equities. There are people who bet on these markets, and the volume that we're getting now in these markets, not just for the election, which is high, there are billions of dollars being spread in there, but in all these other markets are rising incredibly. And it's an art to how to bet on them that's completely different, has a completely different skill set than in the markets that we're normally used to. It's sort of like someone who might be good at betting on horses, having a different skill set for when you're playing poker. And I like this Venn diagram. The populations of people who bet on events is merging with people who are thinking about markets, because each group is realizing that there's other places to make that bet. So I don't know if you've ever been in a situation where you're like, oh, I have this thesis for what I think the next 6 months might be like, but there's no asset to bet on in regular markets. And you go, well, how can I bet on this asset? Well, then you could turn to the betting markets and then place your bet there. Or like when Twitter went private, and I couldn't bet on Twitter anymore. It's like, how do I bet on Elon Musk's shenanigans? I can't just be placing bets on Tesla all the time. Go to the betting market. And
sure,
go ahead.
Or just Tesla. I think everybody else uses Tesla for the proxy.
Well, the issue I have with the Tesla stuff is that sometimes I want to bet specifically on shenanigans. Right? Will Elon Musk
that sounds like
tweet?
Tesla.
Sure. Well, calls on Tesla aren't exactly cheap. You're paying such a high premium.
Fair
for
enough.
That sort of thing.
Yeah. Fair enough.
It's like if I want to short, sometimes I want to buy the options on MicroStrategies, and I go, look, if I could afford the options on MicroStrategies, I don't think I would even need to be doing this. So they're just too high, or GameStop or any of those things. But stuff like I'll watch the news, and I'll be like, I wish I could bet on this thing they're talking about in the news, and boom, there's a market for it on Kalshi or I can use Kalshi, but on Polymarket. I just find it to be fascinating. And what I like is that, yeah, I'm not the only one who find it fascinating. Robinhood is coming into the game, and Robinhood came into the game. What they go on to say later on in that video is that they didn't even develop their own platform. They're using Interactive Brokers event contracts in order to run it on Robinhood.
Interesting.
So they're just like,
They just knew they needed to get in on the game right before the election. That's the big thing, because there's so much trading volume, a lot of trading volume. I wouldn't call it a ton. Even Kalshi's volume is not really that impressive. It's $147 million of trading volume, compared to the stock market or futures, which can trade hundreds of millions of dollars every 5 minutes. It's pretty small in comparison, but it is enough volume for wanting to get involved and seeing enough liquidity on the other side of the trade to make sure that you're actually going to get filled if you want to make a big bet.
I mean, I made 5 figures on a cryptocurrency that had 10,000 holders. So I don't care if there's a lot of volume there. It's how much money you can make.
You're used to trading in markets of illiquidity. Okay, got it.
That's right. And they're growing. What I found to be absolutely fascinating in that the end of that video, they go, so what happens after the election? Like the voting, the election on the Tuesday. And she says, oh, there's no need. They're not really worried about it because essentially they don't think the election will be certified like after there, that there'll be so many shenanigans. There'll be other things to bet on, the lawsuits, the whatever problems with the votings, the electoral college, all kinds of bets there. Don't worry, there's plenty of things to bet on in the after the election. And I was just like, wow, we are in I call it District 1, Hunger Games District 1, this sort of weird dystopian present where it's like you almost, something bad happens and I run to my computer going, are there good odds on this horrible thing that's occurring? I just find it to be, what are the odds on the hurricane? What are the odds on the on fires in California? And just go, okay, what are the odds? And you can bet there. So it's a strange thing that even on mainstream news, they're sort of like, oh, don't worry, there's going to be volatility events that you can be able to bet on. Wait till you see the odds on if there's going to be a civil war in the United States. Those odds will be amazing. People are going to make a year's salary bet on that. I can't wait. So I have to, eat my hat here, because last week you were talking about the idea. I was going, hey, the numbers, the odds that are shown on Kalshi, on Polymarket and PredictIt were showing, Trump 60 and Kamala Harris 40%.
35. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I was just rising and rising. I was like, oh my God, what if this is like more accurate than than polls, because this is wisdom of crowds, it's more immediate. And you're like, no, Tom, this looks like to me like it's just a mechanics thing where the trend is being followed and we're going to mean revert at some point. And I said very stupidly, oh yeah, well, I guess we'll see if we'll mean revert. And you were completely correct. Not only did the mean reversion happen in Polymarket, it happened on every one of the betting markets.
All of them. And it happened
Kalshi, yeah, every single one of them.
So the trade there is really fascinating to me, thinking about it like a futures trend contract. Being able to short Donald Trump at the top there and go long Kamala Harris on the other side was a very interesting spread bet, if you will. So I believe that participants are treating these markets in that way, and they're profiting from the inefficiency. That type of inefficiency will crop up especially in markets that are illiquid like this. So I make this point about Kalshi being a really illiquid market, because $147 million isn't really that much volume across the entire time span that it's been operating. If I understand their total amount traded correctly, I think that's since their the contract was started, right? It's not daily, it's not weekly. That's the total amount of volume traded since they started. That's a tiny, tiny, tiny amount. So when you've got participants playing on either side and potentially playing both sides of the bet, it's interesting to see that the mean reversion trade played out there. It's very difficult for me to calculate what kind of profit potential there is there from the peak. That's something I want to investigate as well. But if you're looking at, these betting markets as a trading opportunity, I would be looking to strategies like that, mean reversion strategies, trend following strategies, because I think that does exist in this market here.
So that was absolutely fascinating. It really changed the way. It's sort of like when you were talking about when you introduced me to VWAP for markets. I didn't really understand at all why that would matter. You pointed to me to some resources I can learn, and then I started understanding. Oh, it's because institutions are using VWAP in order to get in and out of positions, and you're riding that sort of institutional buy. The idea that these similar things can happen within these betting markets feels like an edge that a retail trader can actually exploit. Like you can actually take advantage of this. No reason not to. Like now, I didn't have enough history to understand. Like, oh, it would mean revert like so drastically, all on the pin for all these different platforms, which sort of lends itself to the idea that perhaps it's like the same participant groups that are doing that on all these different platforms. Like, is that what you would think, that the people on Kalshi are the same people or the sell-off that are happening in Kalshi is happening from the same group of people on PredictIt, same group of people on Polymarket? Is that like the sort of idea?
Particularly if there's variance between the two. Essentially, you've got this opportunity to take the bet between the platforms. If the percentage for Donald Trump is higher on one platform and lower on the other, you've got the opportunity to go short on one and long the other and make the difference in between, because you can expect that will get cleared up over a period of time if there's enough arbitrageurs on the platforms. So yeah, I definitely think that they're betting across platforms and then betting within the platform as well.
Is the idea here that is there any momentum to this mean reversion? Let's say for some reason it crosses and now, Donald Trump gets to 48 and Kamala Harris is at 52. Is there then an idea that, because the reason I'm asking is that on Real Clear Politics, the average polling for the battleground states and even overall has actually Donald Trump inching higher. Mm-hmm. So then if the markets there's an expectation that it'll actually resolve to Donald Trump winning, and we see the number on these platforms go to below 50%, whatever, then should we just go like, okay, the mean reversion's happening, momentum's brought it over, and now we have the opportunity to ride that back up to 100%? Or is the idea that these markets are in any way getting to an actual fair value that represents the actual odds, but that's just completely let that go? Like, it's really just I don't even know what the word to use. I want to say manipulated, but like the market's not even trying to measure the actual odds. It's just really aggregating the bets.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I don't know if I have any type of comprehensive thought on that, other than typically when you see mean reversion trades like this happen, the risk increases the closer the spread gets. So you really want to profit from the extremes between the 2 points, and the closer you get to parity between the likelihood of Kamala and the likelihood of Donald, the less profitable that trade becomes. So you'd want to wait for a new trend to establish and then maybe ride that trend until you get to all-time highs and then trade the inverse of that, right? Or do the mean reversion trade from there. If anything, if you're just looking at this from one direction, the Kamala Harris trend already established, and you would have already profited just taking the long on Kamala Harris. The question is, when do you take profits? And that would be when it gets something closer to 48 or 49%. When it gets so close that it's neck and neck again, now there's not much of a trade opportunity in my mind. So we'd be looking for a reversal in the trend, some confirmation of that trend, and then obviously take it in the opposite direction. So I think the trade is probably already over for the most part. We're getting so close that even if you tried to take a trade from here, it would be pretty short-lived. But when it was at its peak there, that 65-35 distance between the two, that would have been a perfect time to strike on either side.
So given the fact that these markets are only going to resolve themselves on January 20th, is there, after the election happens, that volatility is out, we're going to have a new type of volatility, right? Because the condition is that who's going to get inaugurated on January 20th. Well, let's say this litigation that occurs, and for some reason there's an expectation that we won't actually get the answer until like April. Like maybe it doesn't happen. Maybe we have some interim. Maybe Speaker Johnson becomes interim president for a while, what have you. If we see a trend develop where we have this extended, let's say it says Kamala Harris is president. that's what the consensus is, but it hasn't been inaugurated yet. But then the news events happens in such a way that the odds spread again, and we get Kamala Harris at 50%. Let's say it goes back to 50-50. Well, then there's an advantage there, right? I should bet that Kamala Harris will be inaugurated on January 20th and take the bet if it's a 50-50 bet between now and then. Because you would expect that if the consensus is that, well, no, she did win on election day and it's just a litigation thing we're dealing with, that we shouldn't have such a large difference between 100% and her actual and 50%. So if you saw 50-50 still on December 5th, right? A month from now, you see it says 50-50. Do you take that bet, or do you go like, okay, we've got to bet on the direction of what the results were on election night?
Not sure. I am no expert in trading these markets. Never even done it yet. I'm just observing price action here. But I think it seems like a safe bet to try to start your position as close to 50-50 as possible, and in the anticipation that there's going to be some spread between the two. Picking which side makes the most sense is the harder part, though. So I would be waiting for some kind of established trend on either side and then take my bet in the direction that makes the most sense.
Well, I'll end the segment on this one, Mike, because nothing makes me feel more like an American than taking a bet on the election markets on Polymarket. I feel like I've cast my vote.
New concept. I love it.
Yeah. And people, it's so fun because I don't know how much Americans know, how much, like really viscerally know how much people in other countries pay attention to the American elections. I mean, like I pay far less attention to my own, the Canada's elections than I do to the American elections, because it affects freaking everything, from the tone, the social tone, the economic activity, everything is affected. And up until these markets, I felt like I couldn't do anything about it. Now I feel like, I could profit just like any other American by who becomes president.
And on so many other different types of things. I mean, another bet to start keeping an eye on are bets around inflation, bets around interest rates, around employment now. Like with this question we have up in the air about whether that jobs report was inaccurate or not, and we would see a revision in the future, you can bet on whether unemployment in November is going to be above 4.2% or not. So there's so many different ways to try to actualize your opinion about the direction of the economy, the direction of the election, the direction of so many different things. I'm not necessarily a huge proponent of these betting systems, or betting platforms. I think that there's still a whole lot of gambling that's going to take place on these, and it's anyone's guess with most of these things. Personally, I would be more interested in figuring out how to be a more effective algorithmic arbitrager on these platforms, because I do think there's enough inefficiencies here to make this an interesting market to trade from that perspective, which kind of throws out the whole guessing side of this. It's not really about the guess anymore. I don't even have a position on whether Donald Trump or Kamala Harris wins in this case. If you build an algorithm to trade this, you're literally trading price structure. You have no personal opinion about who's going to actually win the election at that point, which was my thesis the last time we talked about this. I think that there's a number of market participants who just do not care what the outcome is going to be. They're more interested in the inefficiency.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's see how this goes. And I'm just begging for the API for Kalshi to become available for non-US residents, but I'm not going to hold my breath. I'm going to start scraping the website and making my own decisions. We'll see how that goes.
That's interesting. I didn't realize that they had blocked that out to only American citizens.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay.
So I have to find.
We'll have to work on that as a team here at Traders Post.
That's exactly. That's exactly it. All right. So I got Mike on board now. I got to get John on board, and then this is gonna happen.